to the public. And they were also concerts every Saturday night, 8 o'clock, and you feel so very nice house. It was the first one.
Not the one that started. Yeah. But yeah. I'm old. And then,
Hello, Cancer. How you doing, sir? You all right? Jackie, Jackie. there's a real good reason.
There's just not a good other place for it. Okay.
Yes, sir. What?
Are we missing someone?
No, Tara's not gonna do that.
Okay. Is she still in Boston?
No, she just got back. And
right.
So,
okay.
Let us do it.
Okay.
There are a lot of times when, over the years, when
I just wasn't
we
sure.
didn't know. Yeah, that's for you. Oops. There's another one down here if you want. I wanted to mention for the first 10 years being Lisa and Vlad had their music stand here. I'm not telling you. I'm just letting you know.
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right.
I've made a different choice.
Great. All right. I'm glad that you made it knowingly and not good.
Trying to elevate again.
Well, I know. I mean, Vlad was he's a tall guy, so.
I hear that, and I'm not.
Neither am I. As you might have noticed.
There was a joke today about. There was a mention of like, oh yeah, Vlad, the rose for high holidays. Yeah, there's one from Vlad that Vlad wore. I was like, have you seen it?
Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom. Wait, I didn't hear you. Did you hear me? Can you hear me? It's all right? All right, good. It's so good. It's so good to be here. On so many levels, it's so good to be here. It's so good to hug many of you. We have a lot of hugging to catch up on. I'll probably say that many times between now and I don't know when. Shabbat is a time of quiet and breathing in. Feeling so lucky to breathe out and to hear your breath. It's one of the great things about scuba diving, right? Has anyone been scuba diving? the experience. Yes, Dr. Sanders. Right? What? It's true. Maybe one day together, right? When you scuba dive, you can blow out like one bubble, right? Isn't this the most? It's a spiritual religious event. You blow one bubble and you can see the bubble and it's bigger and bigger, and you hear it. It's just something so divine. The Hasidic mind has this idea that if you can hear your breath sounds like the name of God if we could utter God's name. So all of us have held our breath a lot in these last 18 months. We've held our breath hoping that COVID will end, that a vaccine will arrive, that we will be healthy, that our loved ones will be healthy. Every one of us has our own challenge and worry, and that we've held our breath about. And I as well. And I smile at this moment because this is the second Friday in a row in which, my ritual actually a year ago, or I can't remember quite when it stopped. My ritual was that multiple times a week I'd be on the elliptical, and on Friday afternoon I would be on the elliptical. I comment on this from time to time. And last week I was like, damn, I want to be on the elliptical. So one piece of it is just like the physical ability and comfort, but there's some other je ne sais quoi, like some magical, godly key energy thing that, oh my gosh, I have a desire for this. I'm talking about the emotional piece. So there's so much to be grateful for. We're gonna light Shabbat candles. The lighter Shabbat candles are about gratitude. They're about the gratitude of people who we love so much, people who are present in this world, and a husband who's not present physically, but who is so present in our hearts. And she'll say, I'm gonna probably cry, but it's okay. Her tears there's a lot of joy in these tears. I'm happy to not speak for you. You'll speak for yourself.
Just became a grandma 2 days ago. My son Daniel and his wife Jessie had a beautiful baby girl, and they named her Alora, Alora, after my husband Alan. And I Googled the name Alora because I had never heard of it before. I just thought it was beautiful. And according to Google, in Hebrew and Greek and Latin, Alora means God's light.
El or. Also made ears. I don't know why that matters, but. Okay. Or the ear and or together.
Yeah, I cry at the same time. I'm stubborn.
Okay, so first of all, what do you think of what's? You'll be light? Okay, fine. Page 2. Okay, and we turn to page 12, L'chu Naranan, Psalm 95, page 12.
L'chu Neranena, L'chu Neranena, L'chu Neranena, L'Adonai, L'chu Neranena, L'chu Neranena, L'chu Neranena. Adonai Kol haaretz shiru Adonai shir chadash shiru Adonai Kol haaretz shiru Adonai shir chadash. Sing unto God all the earth a new song. I will sing unto God a new song. Sing unto God and we'll all sing along. All the earth a new song unto God. Shiru Adonai Kol haaretz shiru Adonai shir chadash. I will sing unto God a new song. And at the bottom of that same page, at the new paragraph, Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, v'tagel haaretz. Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, v'tagel haaretz. Yehiram hayam, Yehiram hayam, Yehiram hayam, Olo. Yehiram hayam, Yehiram hayam, Yehiram hayam, Olo.
Page 14 at the bottom, more Zarua Tzaddik.
Or zarua latzadik uyishrei lev simcha. Or zarua latzadik uyishrei lev simcha. Simcha tzadikim b'Adonai, b'Adonai, v'hodu v'zecher kodesho, v'zecher kodesho. Or zarua latzadik uyishrei lev simcha. Or zarua latzadik uyishrei lev simcha.
Page 16, Psalm 98. Zamru Adonai. Top of the page.
Zamru l'Adonai bechino, bechino, v'kol zimra. Zamru l'Adonai bechino, bechino, v'kol zimra. Zamru l'Adonai bechino, bechino. zimra zamru Adonai bechinor vekol zimra zamru Adonai bechinor vekol zimra.
And we go down about 5 lines to Niharot.
Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'hishtachanu
17 at the bottom.
le'har kosho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'hishtachanu le'har kosho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'hishtachanu le'har kosho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'hishtachanu le'har kosho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'hishtachanu le'har kosho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'hishtachanu le'har kodesho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu.
Page 18, Psalm 29. Mizmor LeDavid, a psalm of David, King David.
Mizmor LeDavid, Avul Adonai b'neim. Avul Adonai kavod va'od. Avul Adonai kavod shemo. Ishtachavu l'Adonai be'adra kodesh. Kol Adonai al hamayim el hakavod hirim. Last verse on 19. Adonai os le'amo yitain. Adonai yevarech et amo v'shalom. Adonai os le'amo yitain. Adonai yevarech et amo v'shalom.
God grant us strength so that we can create peace. Like, what's the purpose of our strength? Why do we have it? Why might it be possible? Why? What's its purpose? And this last verse in Psalm 29 is pretty simple, but pretty powerful. Strength is only a value, is only an asset, is only a blessing when its end is the creation of more shalom. Lechadodei, page 20.
La 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 ya la la ya la la ya la 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 kala yara la 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 B'nai Shabbat lekabela Lechadodili kala yara la yara la yara la B'nai Shabbat lekabela Shamor v'zachor v'diburecha Ishmiyanu el hamiuchad Adonai echad u'shemo echad v'shemo tiferet v'litila Echadodi kala yara la yara la yara la B'nai Shabbat lekabela Lechadodi kala yara la yara la yara la B'nai Shabbat lekabela verse 2 Likrat Shabbat lefunecha ki mekor ha'beracha merosh mikedem nesucha sot ma'aseh v'moshav ha'tefila lechadodi likrat kala yara la yara la yara la B'nai Shabbat lekabela lechadodi likrat kala yara la yara la yara la B'nai Shabbat lekabela verse 5 Hitoreri hitoreri ki va'orech ori 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 shitaberi kevod Adonai alayich nigla lechadodi likrat kala yara la yara la yara la B'nai Shabbat lekabela lechadodi likrat kala yara la yara la yara la B'nai Shabbat lekabela verse 9 Ro'i v'shalom ateret bala gam b'simcha u'b'tzola toch emunei am segula Now turn and greet me instead. Lechadodi likrat kala yara la yara la yara la B'nai Shabbat lekabela Lechadodi likrat kala yara la yara la yara la B'nai Shabbat lekabela
We go from greeting the Shabbat bride, who greets us if we're open enough to her every Shabbat. From that to Psalm 92 on page 22, where cancer.
Let's just go from the top.
Okay.
That'll be easier. Page 22. Mizmor shir leyom haShabbat tov lehodot laAdonai ulzamer leshimcha elyon ulzamer leshimcha elyon lehagid baboker chasdecha ve'emunatcha ba'leilot alei ason v'alei navel alei higayon be'chilon mizmor shir leyom haShabbat tov lehodot laAdonai ulzamer leshimcha elyon ulzamer leshimcha elyon
Middle of the page in the indented.
Sadikat Amad Yifrach Ke'erez Balmanon Yizke Shetulim Bevet Adonai Echad בחצרות אלוהינו יפריחו עוד ינון בשיבה תשנים ברעננים יהיו להגיד כי ישר אדוני צורי ולא הגלת רבו.
30. So it's around it.
Think about all the angels in our lives on page 24. Shalom Aleichem, all angels who are with us virtually, angels who are here in this room, and all the loved ones in our lives who help us dream and be and survive and thrive. 24. Shalom Aleichem.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Asharet, Malachei Elyon, Bimelech, Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem leShalom, Malachei Ashalom, Malachei Elyon, Bimelech, Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruchuni leShalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Bimelech, Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch
Last paragraph.
Hu. Lechem leShalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Bimelech, Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
We can rise, everyone rise as we stand for Baruch Hu.
Baruch et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night. Night to dark, roll into light. Light becomes day, day turns to night. Borei yom v'layla, kolel or mitnei choshech, kolel or mitnei choshech, v'choshech mitnei or. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night turns to day, day turns to night. Umavir yom umevir laila, umavdil ben yom uven laila. Adonai tzevaot shemo, El Chai v'kayam tamid. Yimloch aleinu le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai, Amari v'haravi. Ahavat olam beit Yisrael, Amcha בנו וקומנו, נשיח בחוקך, ונשמח בדברי תורתך, ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד. כי הם חיינו באורך ימינו, באורך ימינו, ובהם נהגה יומם ולילה, יומם ולילה, ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני, אוהב עמו ישראל. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. ברוך שם כבוד מלכותו לעולם ועד.
Be seated. 36
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בהם בשבתך בביתך ולכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
We turn to page 40 as we offer Micha Mocha, singing the song of women, men and women, women and men, joining in understanding and respect, the song of God's miracles, an earth protected and cherished, a gift we pray for our children and for the generations to come, the song of a land once ravished by war, now sometimes quiet and content. Our soldiers, we pray, are home to leave no more, the song of a world redeemed, the song of peace, Micha Mocha, page 40.
ומלכותו ברצון קיבלו עליהם, משה ומרים ובני ישראל לכנו שירה בשמחה רבה, ואמרו כולם.
That was the end of 38, and now we're on 40. That was the end of 38. We should have said it first.
Lai, 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 lai. חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני, גאל ישראל.
42,
השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום, ויעמידנו שומרנו לחיים. השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום, ויעמידנו שומרנו לחיים. ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך. ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך. Last paragraph. ברוך אתה אדוני הפורש סוכת שלום עלינו ועל כל עמו ישראל ועל ירושלים.
There's that Sukkot Shalom of space, place, Israel, Jerusalem, the world, and there's the Sukkot Shalom in time, the Shamru, 44.
What key should we do in Chai? You surprised me today? D minor. Okay. Shamru v'nei Israel et ha-Shabbat לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. והביאו את בני ישראל אותי לעולם לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ששת ימים עשה עלי את השמיים ואת הארץ.
They're getting the same sound in the temple as we're getting here. No?
I did nothing.
What do you think? Are they getting sound? No, maybe not. That's what she's up to, trying to make repairs.
Shabbat.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. I couldn't leave him hanging there. He did it. He gave me the extra repeat.
Text me,
All
Fred.
right. Wonderful, fun, meaningful, spiritual, reflective, energizing. I just want to think, as you all were praying, offering this prayer, actually, a fun teaching of a Hebrew tutor many years ago occurred to me, and I've said this before. You know, the last line of a Shema we just offered, it's the last line, V'yom hashvi'i shavat vayinafash. What is this word shavat? You Israelis are allowed to answer. What is the word shavat? Does it remind you of something? Shabbat, maybe? Right? So this Hebrew tutor of mine, I don't know, Sivan, if this is something that, you know, every Hebrew teacher says, but in Hebrew, nouns are verbs. So Shabbat actually is a noun. It's a day of the week. It's a noun. But because my teacher many years ago told me nouns are verbs in Hebrew, Shabbat is a noun, but Shabbat is the work of Shabbating, or the experience of Shabbating. It's the resting of Shabbat, but it's actually better when the noun and the verb sound the same. It sort of has a rhythm and a beauty to it, poetry to it. Anyway, Shabbat by Nafash, we allow ourselves to Shabbat, right? That's what Shabbat means. All right, we can rise if you'd like for the down to 46.
Ya la 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 Adonai. Ya la 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 sfatai tiftach. Ya la 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 ufi agid tehilatecha. Ya la 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 Adonai. Ya la 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 sfatai tiftach. Ya la 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 Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avotenu ve'imotenu Elohei Abraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibur ve'amara El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim Vegonei Hakol Vezoche Chasdei Avot Ve'imachot Umevi Geula Livnei Bneihem Leman Shemo B'Yahava Melech Ozer Umoshia Umagen Baruch atah Adonai Magen Abraham ve'ezrat Sarah Ata gibor le'olam Adonai Mechayei hakol ata Rav ve'hoshia Mori hatal Mechalkel chayim v'chesed Mechayei hakol ve'rachamim rabim Somech noflim ve'rofeh cholim Umatir asurim Umekayem emunato Lishenei afar Michamocha bal gedurot Umidom elach Melech bimit umechayem Umatzmiach Yeshua V'ne'eman ata l'hachayot hakol Baruch atah Adonai Mechayei hakol
52.
אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
We take a moment for own personal prayer, private prayer, words on the page, meditations of your heart, standing or seated, whatever is your custom or comfort.
If you've concluded your private meditations, feel free to join the Rabbi and I on page 253 as we hold those whose names in our hearts resonate so loudly at this time. Those in our community and those around the world who are in need of our prayers and in need of healing, who are in need of shlemut, of wholeness. So as we conclude our Amidah with words of Oseh Shalom on our lips, we wish for the shlemut of all the cholim, of all those who are ill in body and spirit. Please join with us. 253. Page 253.
מקור הברכה לאמותינו. May the source of strength who bless the ones before us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. מקור הברכה לאבותינו. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say
Amen, amen. All right. Eile Maseh, Bnei Yisrael, Asher Yatsu Me'eretz Mitzrayim. Eile Maseh. These are the stops, the stations. Bnei Yisrael, of the children of Israel. Asher, when Yatsu, they went out, Yatsu Me'eretz Mitzrayim, from the land of Egypt. These are the stops. And then it says, the Eile Masehem, the Motzahehem. And their stations were, these are the stops that went when they went out, and their stations, their stops, their rest stops, right? They had rest stops way back then, like we do, right? Their stations were by Yisume Ramses. They went out for Ramses. Vayachanu Basukot, and they encamped in the place called Sukkot. And then the Yisume Sukkot, and they went out from Sukkot. You get what we started? You know, it's like the triptych, right? We used to have a triptych, and it would tell us, you know, you got 50 miles until another rest stop, and you might want to stop at this place, at Ramses first, and then you drive another 120 miles, you might want to stop at the place called Sukkot. We have a double portion this week, and the second portion, Maseh, 42 stops are reported in our Torah portion. It charts all the stops. There's lights made along the way. And Rashi says, the 11th century commentator, Rashi, says that the Torah includes all 42 stops in order to help us remember our story with precision, because we like to remember these stories with precision. And when we do, there's just more love. We just feel more love, more connection. And that's why God wants these 42 stops in the Parsha. And this is the journey to the land of Israel, to a life in Israel, to building a society in Israel, to electing leaders in Israel. After services last week, several people said to me, Mayor, I was kind of surprised. I thought you'd talk about Israel. And so tonight I'm going to talk about Israel. I don't know if you're happy about it or wish I wouldn't, but whatever. Tonight it struck me, like three different people said, I thought you'd talk about Israel. So I want tonight to talk about the new government. I'd love to actually make it a conversation, but I'm not sure we'll get to that. Anyway, on March 21st, you know almost everything, maybe everything and more than what I'm going to say, but I'm going to say it my way. On March 21st, Israel had its 4th elections in 2 years, and Prime Minister Netanyahu of Likud received the most votes with 30 seats in the Knesset. The second highest was Yair Lapid of the Yesh Atid party. He had 17 seats. Eventually, Yair Lapid was offered the opportunity to try to form a governing coalition, and everyone knew from the outset what he was starting with, Yair Lapid. He was starting with the 8 votes of the Blue and White Party, the 6 votes of Meretz, the 4 votes of Ra'am. If we add 8 plus 6 plus 4, and then the 17 seats, Knesset seats of Yesh Atid itself, what do you have? Take a wild guess. 42, I think. I think it's 42. Everyone knew from the outset that Lapid could get 42 seats. You know, I like these numbers things. And maybe there's a connection between the 42 stops on the geographic map of our Parsha and the 42 stops of the electoral map in our homeland. Ultimately, Yair Lapid got to 61. He convinced Naftali Bennett of the Yamina party and their 7 votes, and Gideon Sa'ar of New Hope, his 6 seats. When I say votes, I mean seats in the Knesset, and Avigdor Lieberman of Israel Beiteinu with 7 seats in the Knesset. Voila, they have a coalition, which requires how many? 61, exactly. Why? Why 61? See, I'm making this interactive. Exactly. There's 120 seats in the Knesset. We have 100 senators and 420. What? 435. Thank you, Lee. Okay, so they have 120 Knesset seats. In order to get a majority, you need 61. So before the swearing in of Naftali Bennett and during the swearing in and since, the Likud and ultra-Orthodox parties primarily have claimed that a candidate who receives 7 Knesset seats and agrees to be prime minister is a traitor, an evildoer, a destroyer of the Jewish state. You only got 7 Knesset seats. I very much disagree with this perspective, but that's what they said. They've said many times. So I want to begin by asking this question. How does a person, a candidate who gets only 7 seats in the Knesset become prime minister? When the top vote getter and the Knesset seat receiver, Benjamin Netanyahu, got 30 seats, Lapid got 17, how does the candidate with 7 seats become prime minister? Maybe you all know all this. If you do, I'm curious, actually, really don't know. But anyway, it turns out that Israelis actually don't elect a prime minister. They elect the person who, in the role of prime minister, is most likely, or they hope will inspire a governing coalition of at least 61 Knesset members. Now, this actually shouldn't sound so surprising to us because we don't actually elect the president either. We elect electors to the Electoral College. And the Electoral College has nothing to do with the national vote, but everything to do with the vote in each specific state, which we might think of as a coalition bloc. Small states in the US have a very outsized impact on the national elections. So in America, it's about coalitions of states, not really coalitions of individual voters as well. So how does a candidate with 7 seats become prime minister? First of all, before Yair Lapid was offered the opportunity to form a coalition, we know this, Prime Minister Netanyahu was asked by President Reuven Rivlin, to form a governing coalition, but Prime Minister Netanyahu failed. He offered Gideon Sa'ar, Naftali Bennett, Benny Gantz, all 3 of them, the opportunity to serve in a rotation as prime minister. They all said no. Apparently, these 3 men believed that removing Prime Minister Netanyahu from office is the most important priority. In their view, what Israel's security and well-being needs most is to have new leadership. Sa'ar, Bennett, and Gantz were all explicit about this. And then after Prime Minister Netanyahu failed at forming a government, President Rivlin offered this opportunity to Yair Lapid to try to create a governing coalition as well. And Lapid believed that the best way to unseat Prime Minister Netanyahu is to offer something similar to what Netanyahu offered to these others. That is to rotate the prime ministership with Naftali Bennett. And further, to give Naftali Bennett the privilege or honor of being first in this rotation. So Naftali Bennett is now the prime minister of Israel, presumably for 2 years. And then in 2 years' time, Yair Lapid will become prime minister and they will complete a 4-year term. Of course, that depends on this government being able to stand for its whole term. In my view, that was a pretty extraordinary thing to offer for Yair Lapid to offer Naftali Bennett this opportunity. And it's worked, at least so far. Of course, we've heard, as I mentioned, alluded to a few minutes ago, it's a fraud, it's undemocratic, it will destroy Israel. Former Prime Minister Netanyahu said that, and a handful of others. But of course, we know Mr. Netanyahu tried to hold on to power exactly the same way. Naftali Bennett acknowledged that he got the idea from Netanyahu. When Bibi offered Bennett and Sa'ar and Benny Gantz to serve as prime minister. So having only 6 or 7 seats is no barrier to becoming a prime minister. It's unusual. It's understandable for many to be confused by this, but it's totally permitted. It could well have happened under Netanyahu rather than under Naftali Bennett or Yair Lapid. Second of all, I want to point out that Prime Minister Netanyahu, when he was prime minister still and since, raked Naftali Bennett and Yair Lapid over the coals for including Mansour Abbas, the leader of the Islamist Ra'am party in the governing coalition. Mr. Abbas is now a part of this new governing coalition. It's true. But of course, Prime Minister Netanyahu tried to do exactly the same thing 2 months earlier. He failed, and Naftali Bennett and Yair Lapid succeeded. So how does a candidate with only 7 seats become prime minister? I'm not the expert, but the critical players in this new government are very different from each other. Bennett is the first kippah-wearing Orthodox prime minister. Lapid, Gantz, Sa'ar, Ayelet Shaked, none of them are religious Jews. Bennett and Sa'ar are very strong on settlements, determined, explicit about settlements. Lapid and Gantz are much less supportive of settlements. Lapid and Gantz are largely open about their support of 2 states. Sa'ar and Bennett are not. Serious differences exist within this governing coalition. Likud may be right that their enormous differences will bring their demise. But it's also possible that what binds them together, this governing coalition, is stronger than what divides them. And it does seem that what binds them is their belief that this moment in Israeli history calls for a new leader of our Jewish state. So our question has been, how does a candidate who received only 7 seats in the Knesset become prime minister? Benjamin Netanyahu failed at creating a narrow ideological government, but Yair Lapid and Naftali Bennett succeeded, it seems, at least to this point, at creating a coalition with vastly different views. So I move to a couple additional questions. How will this government be different from that of the Netanyahu government, and how will it be the same? I'm not going to take a ton of time, I promise. Let's start with what's the same in this government and the prior government. This government is very opposed to the Iran agreement. This government will work very hard, it's very clear, to do everything in their power to prevent a new Iran agreement. I'm not here saying I agree with them, by the way, but my goal here is to point out what's similar about this government and the Netanyahu government. So this government agrees completely with the Netanyahu government about the Iran agreement. This government and the last will have and will fight BDS with great intensity. Prime Minister Bennett will work to keep existing settlements and maybe to expand them, consistent with the Netanyahu government. Prime Minister Bennett, just like Benjamin Netanyahu, is in no way pushing for two states. The man who was Minister of Defense under Netanyahu is Minister of Defense under Bennett and Lapid. Matters of Israel's security are actually almost identical under these two governments. And some of us, we might think that's great, we might not. But again, my point is not to editorialize on it at this moment, but to try to understand what's going on in the Israeli government right now. So there's lots of slanderous stuff, oh, this government is going to destroy the state of Israel. It's a confusing statement because the policies are so darn similar. These policies, which really are the policies that most Israeli believes will determine the security of the state of Israel. The fact that these policies are so similar is why many have said this change government, and that's how Lapid and Bennett and others refer to it, this change government promises little real change. Maybe so. Up to now, actually, I think that's true, but also maybe not. Before I focus on what's going to be different and already is different, I want to share one of the most bizarre political situations that just unfolded. There is a law that every Netanyahu government has passed. They did it every single year for at least a decade. The law says that when an Israeli Palestinian, in other words, a Palestinian who's got Israeli citizenship, marries a non-Israeli, the non-Israeli spouse cannot become an Israeli citizen. It's we can have a lot of opinions on this subject as well, but that's what the law does, is it prevents Israeli Palestinians from marrying a non-Israeli and making them an Israeli citizen. For 10 years, as I said, Likud has made this law a centerpiece of their governing philosophy. Of course, Meretz and Labor and Ra'am, the parties on the Jewish parties more to the center and left, have long objected to this law, and of course the Islamic Party objects to it. The deadline to renew the law just passed, and what happened in this effort to renew it? Likud, for the first time in over a decade, voted against the law, its own law. They drafted this law years ago. They opposed the law that they'd written and promoted. So by opposing the law in this bizarre, like you really have to twist your brain in all these different directions, by opposing this law, Likud comes to vote with Meretz and Labor and the Ra'am parties. It's such a confusing, odd reality at the moment. Why? Why do they do it? Do you get what's going on? I explained it okay? No? Yes? Okay. Hopefully the answer is yes. Anyway, why do they do it? Well, Likud's been pretty transparent, explicit. They did it simply because they think by preventing this law from being renewed, it's going to help them bring down the government, the change government, right now led by Naftali Bennett, and in 2 years, if we get there, Yair Lapid. That's why they did it, to bring down the government. Okay. So we looked at major similarities between this government and the prior one, and we're now looking at a couple of the differences. I would say the first and biggest difference is the nature of the coalition partners themselves. For over a decade, Prime Minister Netanyahu's primary partner was the ultra-Orthodox bloc, Shas of nine Knesset seats, and the United Torah Judaism of 7, and the Religious Zionists of 6. They have 22 seats in this past election. By far, the priority of this bloc, the ultra-Orthodox bloc, the thing that bound them together so intensely is funding for yeshivas and preventing legislation that would require yeshiva students to work. They worked hard to prevent legislation that requires yeshiva students to work. So the last decade of Netanyahu governments relied very largely on this block of Knesset members, mostly ultra-Orthodox. The present coalition, however, is very different. Avigdor Lieberman's Israel Beitenu party of 6 seats is radically opposed to the funding of every yeshiva student's full-time study, full-time. That's what they're opposed to. Labor and Meretz strongly support a pluralistic, egalitarian Judaism and Jewish state. And Ra'am, the Islamist party, hopes to engage Jewish Israelis more deeply in the inequities of Israeli life, the way the budget favors Jews quite heavily. So these new coalition partners may produce very interesting and substantial changes, substantial and substantive changes. I want to highlight 3 of these possible changes, all of which seem quite likely to take place under this coalition. Tamar Zandberg of Meretz is the Minister of Environmental Protection, and Transportation Minister Meirav Michaeli. She's the Minister of the Labor Party. She's the Transportation Minister. So this is 2 parties that are in the center and left. They're members of the governing coalition for the first time in over a decade. For both Labor and Meretz, transportation policy is central to the goal of environmental protection. You can't promote the environment without focusing on transportation policy. So they brought this report, which is on the Times of Israel, is where I read it. Emissions in Israel cost the country 31 billion shekels a year. This was in 2018. 31 billion shekels a year due to emissions. The main source of costly pollution coming from transportation, and according to a report published by the EPA of Israel. Transportation was the main source of emissions at 38%, emissions from power plants produced 30%, and other industries 16%. So this new coalition may well pass environmental protection legislation that seeks to lower the costs that Israel incurs and, God willing, improve the health of the natural, of Israel's natural, the air and water. Okay, so that's the first change that's likely to happen, quite possible. The second is, I'm focusing on Women of the Wall. On April 23rd, Labor MK, Gilad Kariv, used his parliamentary immunity to bring a Torah scroll to the Western Wall Plaza. Right? Anat Hoffman, who's been here, we got to be in her home, thanks to you, Judy, you and Elliot, and many of us have spent time with her. It was illegal for Anat to bring a Torah scroll into the Western Wall Plaza and to the Kotel, to the wall itself. But Gilad Kariv, a Reform rabbi who's a member of the Labor Party and now of the Knesset, he has immunity as a Knesset MK. And so he brought a Torah scroll on April 23rd, Rosh Chodesh, and he handed it to, I'm not sure if it was Anat Hoffman or one of the other women, and they used this Torah scroll legally for the Rosh Chodesh services. And it's likely that there's going to be an egalitarian prayer service that's legal and authentic and official in Israel. That's going to be finally passed at Robinson's Arch. This effort has been in process for many, many years. And because of this coalition, this change is likely to come about. One final change, which was just this past Wednesday. Israel's new finance minister, Avigdor Lieberman, of the Israel Beitenu party, he declared that young men who study full-time in yeshiva must work in order to receive childcare subsidies. In order to be eligible for such subsidies, these fathers, who are young men learning, will need to work or study in a non-religious educational institute for 20 hours a week, 24 hours a week. Something that likely will make it very hard to study full-time. But in order to receive the childcare subsidies, which ultra-Orthodox families have been receiving for years, this is what's going to be required. It's a huge shift. The goal is to ensure that ultra-Orthodox men are contributing members of Israeli society, and maybe even more essentially, that they can more successfully provide for their families. So I'll wrap up with this. I want to come back to our Parsha Maseh, to our 42 stops on the journey from Israel, from Egypt to Israel, to the 42 Knesset seats that we all knew, everyone knew Yair Lapid would have from the outset, if he was narrowly or maybe even blindly committed, devoted to having a thin, narrow ideological government, which of course wouldn't have worked. What's the meaning of the 42 stops that we recount in our Parsha? In the Moreh Nevuchim, the Rambam, Maimonides, claims that the stops are listed to demonstrate to later generations that these events really happened. We really had to struggle, to journey, to stick together, to make it. That's Maimonides. Nachmanides, the Ramban, he offers a different reason for these 42 stops. In his view, the real reason is that all the stops listed, they're like a sod, a secret. There's a deep secret inside these stops, maybe an untold, hidden insight. The Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic world, he explains that the 42 stops represent the stages that each person goes through personally to reach her or his own individual fulfillment, redemption. The idea is that a person is constantly moving from one situation, one experience, one insight, or one state of mind to another. Learning to be present for so many different perspectives and insights, that's the work of every Jew in every generation. Lastly, I want to share a few quotes from the speech that Prime Minister Naftali Bennett gave when he was sworn in 4 weeks ago. And I think these statements on his part express in a very contemporary way the need for all 42 steps or journeys. Quote, the government that will be formed represents many of Israel's citizens, from Ofra to Tel Aviv, from Rahat to Kiryat Shema. Precisely here lies the opportunity. Our principle is we will sit together and we will forge forward on that which we agree. And there's much we agree on: transportation, education, and so on. And what separates us, we'll leave to the side. Twice in history, Prime Minister Bennett says, we have lost our national home precisely because the leaders of the generation were not able to sit with one another and compromise. Each was right, yet with all their being right, they burnt the house down on top of us. I'm proud of the ability to sit together with people with very different views from my own. Thank you, Naftali Bennett. I pray that you are able. I pray that you will help others be able. I pray that we will all take note. We will recall. We will review with care and curiosity and compassion the 42 stops and our own personal and family journeys. Shabbat Shalom. We rise for Aleinu on page 282.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוסף בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני
as always, before we close, we remember loved ones. So if you're remembering a loved one whose name I mentioned, please feel free to rise. And after I share the names, if there's someone else you're remembering who's not on the list, you can rise and share their name. So in the period of Shiva, laid to rest this past week, Robin Zitron Iwanier, Robin Sue Minker Cohen, and Harold Wolf. In the period of Shloshim, we're remembering Jill Carpel Lynn, Myro Plain, Rami Rank, Stephen Rubin, and Ed Strawn. And the Yortzeit anniversary of passing of the following beloved family members and friends: Lillian Burmack, Abraham Druxerman, Martin Goodman, Ida Goldstein, Herbert Grunbaum, Fanny Feldman, Irving Feldman, Anna Horning, Alan David Rosenblum, and Frida Schaffler, Mortimer Wiesel, and Clifford Owens, Selma Diamond. If you're remembering someone whose name is not on the list, if you'd like to share their name, please feel free to do so. Rise. Anyone? Okay, if it's your custom to rise with the mourners, please feel free to do so. We're on 294. Kadishat Home, 294. Yikadal, Yikadash, Mirabah.
Amen.
V'yamad, Yivrach, Yeruteh, V'yamlich Mochuteh. V'chayechon, V'yomechon, Uv'chaye, Yachol, Beit Yisrael. V'galav, Izman, Karib, V'imru, Amen.
Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabba Borach Le'elam Olamei Almaya.
Yitbarach, V'yishtabach, V'yitba'ar, V'yitraman, V'yitnaseh. V'itadar, V'yitaleh, V'yitalal, Shemei, Kurusha,
Rechu.
Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata. Tamiran b'yoma v'imru amen.
Amen.
Yehi shlama rabba min shamaya. V'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen.
Amen.
Aseh shalom imramam. Hu yaseh shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen.
Amen.
The one who creates harmony on high, bring peace to us and to all Israel. And let us say one last time.
Amen.
Amen. Okay, you can be seated. And announcements. Right. Okay. Tomorrow morning, Torah study, 9 a.m., live and in person. Love you, bless you. Who was that? Robert, you, whomever, someone. Okay. And Shabbat services will follow afterwards, lay led, and then what do we have? We have on Wednesday a wonderful gathering on Wednesday, July 21st, live rooftop concert, Billy Joel and Elton John. Billy Joel and Elton John will not actually be the live.
Yes, they will.
They will. Oh yeah, they will. Yeah. Okay. Cantor has special friendship with each of them. Anyway, it's almost sold out. Okay, so please come 7:00, Wednesday the 21st. And Saturday the 24th, we are having a live Havdalah in the park. This is also in Stepping Stone.
I think it's at Fireman's Park.
Fireman's Park.
Grace Avenue, Fireman's Park.
Okay, good. All right. On Fridays, before services, an opportunity to do some mitzvah work, some helping people who are food insecure. This just tonight, I want to give a shout out to Neil Endelman, who came in to help us, and he and Jackie did a whole bunch of packing. Last week there was a family that came in. It would be wonderful to have, some real masses of groups of people, so it's an opportunity at 5:30 on Friday nights. Okay. If we want to help, if we know that you're looking for help of some kind, let us know. Please share with us any needs that you think we may be able to help with. Thank you to Cantor Adam, to Jackie, it says Jackie Winnick, Jackie Wadsworth. Thank you, Jackie. You're doing a ton on Friday nights. Dear Shy, thank you. Randy, you're somewhere, but I don't see you. Where there she? Yeah. Okay, Randy, thank you a ton for your greeting, your ushering, your welcoming, you're a welcoming presence. Like, we all know that. What an amazing light and bright soul and smile and person you are. All right, thanks to the Marglas for the challah, the Oneg bakers, Roberta, Anna, Rachel Suden, okay, and Linda. Is Linda here? I didn't see you, Linda. What? Okay. Linda's not here, but her sweet baking is here. So, all right, I think Zeu must speak. Cantor, we Kiddush and Mosey. Why don't we all rise?
We're on page 4.
We're waiting.
I'm gonna start. Vayire vayevoker yom hashishi, vayecholu hashamayim vayaretz vechol tevam, vayechol Elohim beyom hashvi'i melako asher asa, vayishpot bayom hashvi'i mikol melako asher asa, vayevarech Elohim et yom hashvi'i vayekadesh oto. Ki bo shadat mikol melachto asher bara Elohim lasot savri. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri agafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho v'yahava v'ratzon hinchilanu. Zikaron lemase bereshit, ki hu yom tehila lemikra kodesh, zecher litziat Mitzrayim, ki banu v'acharta, ve'otanu kidashta mikol hamim, ve'shabbat kodshecha. Yava uveratzon hinchaltanu Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh hashabbat.
All right. Did someone bake these, or did we? I don't know. Whatever. Yes, someone must have. Baruch atah Adonai
Eloheinu melech haolam. Amotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen.
Someone else is going to do this. I'm not. But enjoy a challah somehow.
Or share a challah with someone you love.
Exactly. It's a new idea rather than a big one.
Okay.
All right. We close Cantor with.
Let's close with Adon Olam on page 321, and you can have a seat and take a load off as we do this. It is Shabbat after all. For Adon Olam? Adon Olam Hashem Allah B'terem kol Yetzir Nivra V'yet Nasa B'chefzo kol Azai Melech Shemo Nikra V'yacharei Kichelo Levado Yimloch Nora Vehu Haya Vehu Ove Vehu Yihye Betifara Vehu Echad Ve'yen Sheni Lehamshilo Lehachbira Beli Reishi Beli Tachlit Velo Ha'oz Ve'hamisra Vehu Betzlochem li be'et zara Ve'hu nisi umanos li Ve'nan kosi be'yom ekra
בידו הפקיד רוחי, בהייתי שם בעירה, ועם רוחי כבירתי, אדוני לי ולא יירא. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom all.